Hey guys, so today we're moving on to a new series, Lifelines. We're working through the book chapter by chapter. There's my dad. Yeah, so I'm going to be doing the first chapter today, which is called Changing Your Self-Image, Lessons from the Life of John. So I'm going to go through a few bits of John and the verses that I asked you guys to have a look at. So the first thing we're going to have a look at to do with John is his nickname. Him and his brother James were known as the Sons of Thunder, which meant that they had a really bad temper and were probably known to have outbursts of anger and maybe even violence. So looking at his life and looking at all his imperfections and flaws that we're going to have a look at now, you wouldn't really have thought that Jesus would have gone, you'd have thought he'd go, I'll choose all the best people when he was going through and choosing his disciples, but he had hundreds of other people he could have chosen and would have gone with him, but he chose John, so we're going to have a look at why that was. So in those days, every young boy would have wanted to become a rabbi, so we all want to go to the best unis and get the best A-levels and GCSEs and stuff, but they would have all aimed to become a rabbi, and to do this they would have been chosen to be a disciple of a rabbi. And we know that this never happened to John because he was a fisherman, so we know that he was rejected from this part of his ambitions in life. This made it a really big deal when Jesus came along and chose him. John must have thought oh wow, Jesus has seen something special in me. So we might wonder why Jesus chose John, and whether he made a mistake in choosing John, who was easily angered. And yeah, so you can see from the verses that I gave you that John was far from perfect, as we all are, but in today's society you would know that all of our mistakes have consequences. If you break the rules at school, in my school we'd get detention, and then you get put on a report card. Yeah, so he's got it's 3 strikes and you're out. So we're going to go through John's 3 strikes. So the first one is in Mark 10:33 to 38, which was that John was selfishly ambitious. So that one says, "We're going up to Jerusalem," he said. "The Son of Man will be betrayed to the chief priests, the law, and the teachers of the law. They will condemn him to death and will turn him over to the Gentiles, who will mock him and spit on him, flog him and kill him. 3 days later he will rise." Then James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came to him. "Teacher," they said, "we want you to do for us whatever we ask." "What do you want me to do for you?" he asked. They replied, Let us sit at your right. Let one of us sit at your right and the other at your left in glory." "You do not know what you are asking," said Jesus. In this story, like I said, John's being selfishly ambitious. Jesus was telling them how horrible it's going to be for him, how he's going to get murdered. People will mock him, and all they can think about is themselves. All they can be thinking about is how well they're going to do when they get to heaven. if someone said to you, if someone told you that they've only got a few months to live, and you just said, oh, can you leave me that watch I really like, or can you leave me that dress I really like, or anything. If that was me, I'd be like, I've just told you I'm dying. That's not exactly how I expected you to react. But that's not how Jesus reacts. John and James are so ambitious that, and they want to do well so much that they've ended up being so selfish, even putting themselves before Jesus. See, like last week's video, we should be putting other people before ourselves, and that's what Jesus wanted them to do, but they didn't quite understand that. So we're going to move on to the next one, which is Luke 9:54 to 55. That one is that he was vengefully violent. When the disciples, James and John, saw this, I'm going to go back to 51, verse 51. As the time approached for him to be taken up to heaven, Jesus resolutely set out for Jerusalem, and he sent messengers on ahead. They went into a Samaritan village to get things ready for him, but the people there did not welcome him because he was heading for Jerusalem. When the disciples, James and John, saw this, they asked, "Lord, do you want us to call down fire from heaven and destroy them?" But Jesus turned and rebuked them, and they went to another village. So in this one, John just wants to lash out, and they've hurt him. He's just he's so angry that, like I was saying earlier, he was prone to becoming he had a temper. So he was so angry that that anyone would do that to Jesus, to his friends, that he just lashed out and wants to burn them all. But that isn't how Jesus goes. So Jesus rebuked them. We don't know what he said, but yeah. And so I think this is to do with John having a fragile self-image. So John doesn't really know who he is. And the final strike, his third strike, is he's excessively competitive. So this is in John 20:3 to 4. So Peter and other disciple, which is John, started for the tomb. Both were running, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. So this is John's gospel, so he wrote this one, and he's just got to put in, oh, we were having a race, we were racing to get there, but I won. Just to let you know, I won. I'm quite a competitive person, I'd say. When we play these little games, I get quite into them. But that it's not saying that that's bad. It's okay to be a competitive with. It can be fun, but then sometimes there's like a limit of what sort of things you can be competitive with. So it can become unhealthy, like comparing yourself to others. You can be competitive in that way. Like I often look at someone else doing really well, and I'm like, oh, and it just makes me feel a bit rubbish, if I'm honest, when I'm like, oh, so and so's done really well on this essay, or I don't know, all sorts of things. And yeah, that can have a bad, that can get to the bad side of competitiveness. Competitive, I don't know. But so John was unhealthily competitive. That's what this one was getting at. So yeah, you'd have thought that Jesus wouldn't be impressed with all these things that John's doing, all this ambitious, selfishly ambitious, vengefully violent, and excessively competitive. So yeah, you would have thought that Jesus wouldn't be impressed with all these failings, but Jesus, he wasn't dwelling, and he doesn't dwell on the flaws, because he loves him so much. When someone loves you, we know that we'll be forgiven. So you're much more likely to do things you're going to get away with things, so you're much more likely to do them. My family definitely see the worst of me and see me at my worst, just because I know that they love me, and that, I don't know, whatever I do, they will forgive me. And just like this love Jesus has for his disciples and for John. So back to changing your self-image. This doesn't mean changing how you are or changing your personality. It just means changing how you see yourself, how you view yourself. And often this is different to how others view you. People often pick out the flaws in themselves rather than the positives. So John went from seeing that he was the angry one to viewing himself as the loved one. So just have a think about how you view yourself. Do you view yourself like God views you, in love, and seeing how much he loves you, or do you view the negatives? Have a think through that, and if you've got any questions or anything, just comment on this video or message us on Instagram. Bye.